Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome you all to the photojournalism course. It has a course code of GMC 422. This is lecture number 5 and in the part 1 we are going to discuss composition principles in photography. I'm Anwar Khan, lecturer journalism in mass communication department, Cohort University of Science and Technology. So what are the various discussion points? We are going to discuss, first of all, the very definition of the composition used in photography. The students will come to know about the very meaning and explanation about the composition in photography. Then they would come to know about that what are other fields in which the very concept of composition is used. So other fields, they would be explained in a very brief manner, and then finally we are going to discuss some of the composition principles used in photography. So these are some of the discussion points that we are going to discuss in our today's session, and these are our learning objectives as well. Our students must be able to understand all these 3 points after attending today's session. So let's have a look at the very definition or meaning of the composition in photography. Well, when we want to define it, we say that it is basically arranging elements in a picture in such a way that delivers the message, right? So this definition of the composition is very simple and easy to understand. It means that when you are taking a picture, then at that time you need to arrange all the possible elements, right? So for that very picture, you need to have arrange all these elements in order to have more beautiful and attractive pictures. And this is basically called composition, that when you are arranging the elements, different elements, in order to have more attractive and meaningful picture, right? And usually it happens with us that when we are taking a picture of our family members or friends, then we usually guide them. It is because that we are arranging the elements, and sometimes we also change our position in order to have beautiful pictures. Well, why and what is the reason? The reason is that it is composition. We are unconsciously following the rule of the composition, and this composition is also is a way of guiding the viewer's eye towards the most important elements in the work. And this composition will also force us to look or to see the picture in a specific way, because this is what the meaning of the composition is, that it forces us to see the picture in a very specific manner. We are going to explain this very point in the coming slides. And what happens that this composition, it produces beauty, attraction and very meaning in the pictures, and it is also an element of the professionalism. I mean, if you are following the composition principles, so what happens that this is actually the professionalism that you are following. And any expert photographer who sees your photos or pictures, he or she would come to know that you are following the composition rules. So this is composition in photography. Then we also have composition in other fields as well, like videography, like filmmaking, like literature, music, dance, drawing, sculpture making, and numerous other fields. Well, what does it mean? It means that the composition is a very broad term, and it is not only limited to the field of photography. It is used in several other fields: filmmaking, literature, music, dance. I mean, different and numerous other fields, right? So, for example, we can say that when usually we say that essay writing or essay composition in literature, music composition for the songs, composition in sculptures. So these are few of the examples of the composition. So it means that the very term composition is not only found in the photography, but it is also found in numerous other fields. So let's discuss the various composition rules and principles which are followed in the photography. So the first one is the rule of thirds, and rule of thirds is one of the most important principle in visual arts. So according to rule of thirds, what happened that we take an image and divide this image into two horizontal and two vertical lines, like two horizontal lines like this one, and two vertical lines like this one and this one. And these intersecting points, these four intersecting points, they are called the points of interest, or they are called the focal points or the most important points. So what happens that whenever you want to photograph a picture or take a picture, what will happen that you will need to place your subject or any part of the subject on these points or with these lines, right? So it is important, according to rule of thirds, that you need to place your subject on these lines, because it has a certain reason. And that the theory is that if you place your subject or parts of the subject on the points of interest or along the lines, then your photo becomes more balanced, and it will enable a viewer to interact with the image more naturally. So these are the actually these two reasons that it will that your image will become more balanced, as well as the viewer will be interacting with the image naturally. And according to different studies, people's eye usually go to one of the focal points most naturally rather than the center of the shot, right? So this is basically the reason that it is very natural to look at the focal points or the lines rather than the center, right? So this is basically the reason and the logic behind the rule of the thirds. See this picture carefully, and you would come to know that the this child is placed along the line, along this line, right? And we came to know about the logic behind these very lines, that our eyes naturally goes towards these lines, right, or these points, and that is the reason that this child is placed just along the line. So see this very picture, it is very interesting because tower is placed along the line, and they are this composition rule or the composition principle is forcing us to see in this direction to look at the tower. Similarly, another focus is placed on this very line, right, on the sky or on this line, on this white line, fine. And then another focus is placed on these very stones, right, because we came to know about these 4 points. These four focal points are the most important points in a picture, and whatever is important on the object or any part of the object, we place those objects along these points. So the tower and the line, right, and the stone, the big stone over here, they are the important parts in this picture, and we can see that they are placed along the lines or the points. So this is actually the rule of the thirds. So a question arises that do we have or do we follow rule of thirds in the movies? So what is the answer? Well, the answer is very simple, and the answer is yes. We follow rule of thirds in movies, in documentaries, in dramas, and in other visual arts. A rule of thirds is not only limited to the photography, right? It is followed in other genres as well, and this picture is taken from a very famous movie titled Joker. The movie is Joker, and here is the character. We can see that he is placed just along the line. We can see it, right? And the reason is, we came to know about it that it is the rule of the thirds, that is that the characters are placed along the line, fine. And we came to know about it that there is a specific logic behind the rule of the thirds. And let me make it very clear to you as well that whatever the US entertainment industry is producing, it has a specific reason and logic. Do not think that they are producing the things without any reason. No, it would be 100% or 200% wrong. They are not producing anything uselessly or without any research. Whatever they are producing, they have researched it, and they are producing it with a specific reason, fine. So very simply, to cut it short, a rule of thirds is not only followed in the photography, but it is also followed in movies, documentaries, dramas, and in other visual arts. Take this another example, a very famous movie, Harry Potter. We can see again that the female character is placed along the line, and here again we have another character who is laying on the ground, who is placed just along the line, right? So what happened that these lines are powerful lines, and whatever you want to show to the audience, right, or what you want the audience to see and view are placed along these lines, these vertical lines, because they are the powerful lines. The second composition rule is called the leading lines, and the leading lines again very important, and because they create some powerful images, because if we understand the role and meaning of the leading lines. So first of all, let's have a look at what do we mean by leading lines. Leading lines are lines that appear in a photograph that have been framed and positioned by the photographer. So simply we can say that leading lines are simply the lines which are present and available in a photograph, right? Because these are the lines which again add beauty and attractiveness in a photograph, and the function of the photo of these lines is that they often draw the viewer's eye in a specific direction or towards a designated portion of the photograph. So it takes or it performs two actions. One, it the viewer's eye in a specific direction, right? It draws our attention or it takes us in a specific direction or towards a particular portion of the photograph. So these are the two functions which are performed by leading lines. And the example of the leading lines is that we can see that these are actually the leading lines. This one is the leading lines, and again this one is the leading lines, and this one is the third leading lines. So what happens that these leading lines takes our attention in a specific direction and take and reveals the beauty of the mountains over here, right? And these mountains covered with snow, it takes us to these beautiful mountains, right? So this is actually the function of the leading lines, that it draws your attention and takes you in a specific direction. Another example of the leading lines, and here in this picture we have several types of leading lines. We have the horizontal leading lines, we have the example of the vertical leading lines. Over here we have it, right? And these different types of lines coming together and make again a very beautiful picture, right? We have the trees over here, we have the sky over here. So these leading lines along with it, they are producing some beautiful picture, right? So this is another example of the leading lines. Now the question is where to find leading lines, right? So the answer is very simple, that we can find these lines everywhere, like on roads, on fences, window panes, buildings, doorways, bridges, rivers, lampposts. I mean, the list continues. So you can find leading lines or lines everywhere, right? It's not very difficult to find leading lines. The thing is that you just need to understand that what do we mean by leading lines and how to use these leading lines to produce some attractive and beautiful images. Again, we say that what are the different types of the leading lines. So we can find it in the form of the horizontal leading lines, vertical leading lines, curved leading lines, and converging lines. Take this example. This is the example of the horizontal lines, all right, and this is again the example of the vertical lines. These are the vertical lines and these are the horizontal lines. And remember that these are very powerful lines. We just need to understand the meaning of these lines. We just need to understand the power of these lines, because once you understand these lines, so you can produce some very very beautiful pictures. Take this example. This is the example of the curved lines, right? Again, if we are having like this, we are this curved line and then this curved line. So these lines, these are called the curved lines. They produces beauty into the image. I mean, again, you can see that it takes our viewer's eye or draw our attention in a specific direction, and we are just going in this way, and then the beautiful house is revealed, right? So this is actually the function of the leading lines. So this is the end of the lecture number 5, and I hope that you would have understood all the discussion points that we have already mentioned in the very second slide. Let me summarize again what we have already discussed. We came to know about the very definition and meaning of the composition used in the photography. Then we came to know about the meaning of composition used in other fields. And then we discussed two principles or rules of photography. One is a rule of thirds, and the second is leading lines. These are the two composition principles which we study in our part 1. In the part 2 we are going to reveal other principles and guidelines of the composition. I hope that it would be easy for you people to understand. This lecture will be uploaded on the CAST server, and if you have any problem, any query, please comment over there. I will be there to answer it. See you in the next lecture. Till that, stay home, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.